Twitter is once again causing a panic. Some Huskers are showing out at the Combine, and we get some updates on the first week of spring practice. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Aaron Muller, and welcome to Cobsmacked. This is a Nebraska football channel where we cover the Husker season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. If you enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more content like this. Getting right into the headlines, there seems to be a Twitter rumor going around that seems like the Dublin game could get moved to Las Vegas now because of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. I haven't actually found any credible sources as to where this is coming from. It's just a Twitter rumor as far as I'm concerned. But if that were the case and they did move it to Las Vegas, I'm sure we would see more Husker fans be able to make the trip to Las Vegas. So we'd have more of an impact, like a home field advantage type of thing there. But it would really suck for the team and for the fans to miss out on the experience. We did miss out on it last year when we were supposed to play Illinois, and to miss out on it again for the second year in a row would just, I don't know, it would be a great experience for everybody to get to go overseas and play in Ireland and have that experience under our belt. Turning to the Combine reports, a lot of the Huskers have been showing out at the Combine as well, but none are turning heads quite like Cam Jurgens is. He ran a 4.92 in the 40, and the guys on the broadcast were kind of making comments that, he can move, making fun of his name, Beef Jerky. But they had an awesome overlay of him running alongside, like they do that ghost comparison, running alongside Ndamukong Suh, and right after that, he ripped off the 25 reps on the bench as well. So many are projecting him now to be pushed up into the second, whether that be mid-second or early second day of the Combine or of the draft. So he would be the earliest Husker taken since 2015, where they took Amir Abdullah and Randy Gregory both in the second round. So if he's able to push up that far, that would be something quite impressive. Other Huskers are showing out at the Combine as well, but none quite like him. Austin Allen was performing. He placed in the top 5 in every category that, like the 40, the high jump, everything like that. He did place a 4.83 time in the 40, which I've seen a lot of still frames of that. It seems like they kind of jumped that score up a little bit. It looked like he probably got down to a 4.72, which would put him up there even further. But he placed top 5 in every other category, and he did really well on the route drills and stuff. So there's not so much numbers associated with that, but he looked good in that. And so a lot of people are thinking too that he's one of the better tight ends in the draft, if nothing else, just for his hands and his frame. JoJo also didn't perform outstandingly as far as his stats go. His 40 wasn't great. His vertical wasn't great, but people are more watching his game film and how fluid he is on the film, and how his football IQ really plays into who he is as a player. And so I think that alone is going to garner some attention for him. Cam Taylor-Britt was running his 40 as I started to record this. His first attempt was an unofficial 4.45, so if he's had an official one since then, I'll update that on Twitter. But I have no doubt that any of these guys could find a home on an NFL roster. It's just a matter of what teams are looking for, and certainly all these guys can add something to some team. But what do you guys think? Do you think that any of these guys are going to make it to the first round, to the second round? Do you think that any of these guys could potentially go undrafted? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on, we're going to touch on the spring interviews. So we've had interviews on Monday, and I believe we had some on Wednesday as well. I kind of just ran through them all. I didn't really see when they were posted, but Mickey Joseph, we'll start with him. He mentioned how the walk-ons have just as much of a chance to start as the guys that came in on scholarship. So the depth chart, he said, is written in sand, and I really liked that quote from him. It means that you might be number 1 today, but if you don't put in the work tomorrow, you're going to move right back down the depth chart. So he said this is also about raising men too. You have to work every day to get what you want, and he's all about that as well. You want to have good husbands, good wives, good husbands, good brothers, good sons, that type of thing. So he's all about building a person that can be a good player, and so I like that as well. He did mention that the inside receivers right now are looking like Omar, Trey, and Brody. They have to be tough. They have to be smart to play that position. What are they doing on option plays? Since they are on the interior for the wide receivers, what are they doing as far as blocking goes? And who are they trying to pick up so that the running back has more lanes to run? But also they have to be tough because they're running over the middle. They're going to be crossing over, knowing they're going to get hit, running through traffic, that type of thing. And he's not looking for any one guy. He says that if we get 3 guys that are the best on the field, they could be all inside guys, but they're going to put them on the field. It doesn't matter what position necessarily they will be playing. He did touch on special teams as well. He said it's not going to be optional, and somebody asked him, like, why is it not optional? He said, because I said so. He said that the worst thing that could happen for a college player is to get to the NFL and then have to learn special teams. He said, if you want a future in the NFL, you have to learn special teams. And that's true for most people. If you look at Will Compton, he has made his career on making special teams and being on rosters and just being versatile as a player. And so, I mean, he's speaking honestly, and it's giving a lot of guys more of a realistic sense of what's going to be expected from them in order to make it to the next level, which is a lot of these guys what their ultimate goal would be. He touched on Xavier Betts, how he said he was immature when he came in, but he's grown up a lot since he's been here. Just in the short time that Mickey Joseph has been here, Betts has shown a lot of improvement as far as his mentality and his focus on the game goes. He says that there's a lot of pressure on in-state kids to perform to a certain level because you're from here, you know the culture already, so people are expecting more of you right off the get, and Xavier hasn't really lived up to those expectations, whether that be his preparation, whether that be something off the field or whether that be he's just not preparing for the games correctly. But the goal is to get him consistent this year because when he has come in, he's been explosive. He has been one of the top wide receivers on the team, but he just can't get that consistency going. So Joseph's looking to get him more consistent with the game so we can see him every week. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like Omar Manning's up there and Xavier Betts up there. Omar has a big frame, but Xavier has more of a well-rounded skill set. And Mickey's really looking at him to be one of those guys to add to his resume as far as guys that make it to the NFL. Mark Whipple also likes big guys on the inside, is what Mickey Joseph said. He said that Omar embraced moving to that inside spot. So as I mentioned, it's going to be a tough place for him to be, but with that big frame, Mark Whipple is going to like to target that guy over the middle. It's going to be a nightmare for linebackers to try to match up against Omar Manning with the speed, with the size, with the power that he has. And so I think that's probably why Mark Whipple likes that. He's like, usually you see small guys running across the middle, but with Whipple's offense, he likes to have those big guys to have targets over the middle. As you see with the tight ends as well, he likes to utilize those tight ends as pass receivers as well. So he said there's a lot of young guys coming in, and there can be a mixture of preparedness and how their maturity is. He said some guys are ready to come into college right away, Victor Jones Jr. being one of them. Some guys are not so ready. So he mentioned Dakotas Crawford. He said kind of told him, just wait till the fall to come. Don't come early. You're not quite ready for this. And he's just, like I said, he's giving it to them straight. He's giving their expectations a realistic sense of what's going to be expected from them when they get here. Moving on to the running backs coach, you had Brian Applewhite. So I was wrong. I did mention when I was talking about his hire that it looked from his resume, it shows all running back coaches on there. That's not quite right. He says that he's coached every position at some point or another. He even mentioned that his time as an offensive lineman coach gave him valuable insight. He said he was kind of a tight ends coach that got moved to an offensive lineman coach, and that gave him a different insight. He does prefer to coach the running backs, but being able to see what the guys up front have to deal with and what they're expected to do, it really gives you a different sense of what the running back has to be looking for from those guys. The footwork, the eyes, the tempo of the game, that helps them to prepare the running backs for how they can kind of gel with the offensive line and make the most out of that combination. He mentioned Yant. He said he's a big guy. Obviously, Yant's a lot of the intangibles that you want from a running back. Yant has those, so he was really big on him. He says that before anything else, though, he's looking for tough guys. He's looking for tough guys to come in. You can't build dynasty without being nasty. I loved that quote. I put that on Twitter. After hearing how he talks now, too, I kind of wrote off Ramir Johnson. Just his size and his athletic ability doesn't seem like compared to all these other guys like Yant, like Anthony Grant coming in, like Gabe Ervin, it doesn't seem like he had the size to compete for that position. But after hearing Applewhite and what he expects, he says toughness is going to come first, and then the ability to coach basically is right after that. So Ramir's both of those things. He's tough and he's able to be coached. He'll do anything that it takes to play on the field. So he also mentioned that very few of his running backs don't also run track. He said he expects his players to be multi-athlete. He wants them to continue to build on their athletic skills all year round. And most of them do track, some of them do basketball, some things like that. But he says that he always wants competition from these guys. He doesn't want them to have an off season. He wants them to continually be trying to improve. But he did mention he had addressed the competition as far as the running back room goes and how much depth there is there and how many guys could potentially play. And he says with that much competition, you either get better or you quit. And he doesn't expect any of these guys to quit. He expects everybody to kind of push themselves in the spring, because come August, that depth chart's going to reset, and we're going to do this all over again in fall. So the spring is kind of going to be like a taste test of what is going to be expected from them. They're going to have the off season or summer to kind of work on themselves, and then come fall, it's going to be all, foot to the gas to the pedal. I am out of my mind. It's going to be, all systems go essentially in fall. And so he wants to make sure that these guys are prepared and that they know that the best guy is going to win out. It doesn't matter. There's no favorites. So he also did not want to have one bell cow. He doesn't want to have one big back while these other guys don't really, perform well. He said he wants at least 3 top running backs. He wants 1A, 1B, 1C. He doesn't want 1, 2, and 3. He wants all 3 guys to be able to go in at any time, and they're all going to be on the same level. He said it's not if, but when a running back gets injured, and that's why he wants the 3, and that's been proven throughout the past few seasons that you have guys get injured, so you need the guy behind him to be just as capable of doing what's asked of him. He did also mention when he recruited Texas for Nebraska, it was a warmer reception that he got than he did when he went as TCU, and I kind of thought that was interesting. He said that people haven't forgotten Nebraska's legacy down there, and again, I just think that's odd that especially TCU being in Texas, he's getting more like welcomes and happy faces and guys that are happy to see him coming from Nebraska than he is from a team in Texas. So that's nice to hear. Nice to hear that he thinks that Nebraska's legacy hasn't died. It's been a long time since then, but people, I think at this age group, he was mentioning like how dads now, when their kids say, hey, I got an offer from Nebraska, the dad's like, oh, hey, did you know that they did this in the 90s? Because that's what they grew up with. So the vibe from listening to him overall, though, was that he sounded like a head coach. He sounded like he knew every aspect of the game. He understood it fundamentally. And he was well-rounded as far as his knowledge of the game goes and what he expects from the guys. And it seems like a lot of the guys, as we'll get to, we talk to them, they really respect him for that as well. They know what's expected. They know where they need to be. There's no like gray area there. He's very black and white. And so I think it makes it easy for guys to understand where they need to be in the fall. Touch on Bill Busch for a little bit. He had an overall knowledge and technique of special teams behavior that I thought was really impressive. He mentioned an average punt roll stat. It was like after a ball hits the ground, it rolls an average of 16 yards, 16 to 18 yards, something like that. And I thought that was interesting that he knows like little tiny details. He just pulled that out of his head. It wasn't just like something he had to look through his notes for. He pulled that out of his head. He has a very deep understanding of special teams down to the different techniques that he could use on kick returns. He mentioned like not wanting to put your heels on the 8-yard. He wants to kind of have your offset feet and things like that. All things I don't quite understand, not being a special teams coach, but the guys are obviously going to help hit on that very well this spring. Specialist mindset and the difference between the FCS and FBS was something that he kind of touched on as well. He said that guys kicking specifically coming from a lower school up to a big school like Nebraska, there's not going to be a ton of difference there. There's going to be, you're kicking the same size of field goal, you're kicking from the same distance away, kicking the same football. He's like, there's not a huge skill difference there as far as doing it from one level to the next, even up to the NFL. Obviously, the speed's going to be a little quicker. You need to get that off, but the technique and the motion's going to be about the same. So he didn't feel like it was going to be an issue there, but he did say that he would help on the special teams. It's not going to be such a hands-off approach as we have had the past few seasons, which almost no hands-on at all. But he did say that he was going to try to get these guys ready. And if they have questions, he'll help them on their technique as well. But he's going to be touching every aspect of this special teams. And it sounded like the first 10 minutes of practice on Monday, they ran through special teams at kickoffs. So they're already addressing special teams right off the bat here in spring. Touching on Donovan Raiola, so he said he already sees guys in the locker room coaching each other, and that's what he wants. That's what Scott Frost has mentioned that he wants. He wants the locker room to kind of coach itself, to be accountable for itself. He wants the players to be holding the guys younger than them accountable. He did mention that the center, he said a few different guys have been taking snaps at center, and he didn't name names, but he did say that a few guys are there and that they really don't have a front runner there yet either. Somebody had mentioned, like, are you looking at like Cam Jurgens from last year as somebody to compare what they are now? And he went like, who? And they said, Cam Jurgens. And he had no idea what they were talking about. It didn't seem like a dig. It wasn't like an insulting, like, who are you talking about? It was like like they're just using a lot of different guys for reference. He hasn't necessarily been looking at what Nebraska did last year because that wasn't successful. He's looking at NFL guys. He's looking at the Bears specifically. He mentioned looking at Iowa's center from last year because they were successful. And so he's having his guys do a lot of research as far as what a good center, what a good line looks like, and he's hoping to embody that here as well. They asked him 2 things that he hopes the line is known for, and he says he wants discipline and toughness to be the top 2 again. It's very similar, like echoes what Applewhite was saying as well. So discipline, we would love to see discipline on the offensive line given all the flags we had last year, and toughness obviously as well. You need to be tough to play either line in the Big Ten or in college in general, but to hear that those are the 2 things he's expecting, not necessarily, any particular stat. He's looking at characteristics, like character traits from his guys. He did mention that Nebraska was his favorite team growing up. Even when he was at Wisconsin, he was keeping track of how the Huskers were doing. That might have a lot more to do with his brother playing here. But moving on to Eric Chenander. So he also mentioned that the locker room was coaching itself. He said that there's lots of snaps to go around because of all the guys that left last season. He said there's never going to be a next JoJo or a Cam Taylor-Britt. He's like, and that's not what we're expecting. We're not expecting guys to come in and be somebody else. He said we're trying to just figure out who the next big guy is going to be for us, and who can step up into those positions. He did mention a ton of guys that could fill in for that nickel role. He mentioned some guys that could slide back into tackle and safety. He seemed to really, and this has kind of been the case for him while he's been here. He likes guys that can be moved around pretty versatilely on that backside, on the secondary and the defensive backs. He likes guys that can kind of float around and be versatile. But he's going to put in the best guys regardless of their current position. So if a guy that was playing nickel last season or cornerback last season seems to be doing well at safety, they're going to push them back into safety. And so I like this. Again, it's kind of an open playbook at the moment. They're just kind of addressing everybody's skill set and where they could move, and nobody's going to be locked down to one position. He did mention that there's going to be some good leaders on defense this year, so some people were worried that since JoJo was leaving, since Cam Taylor-Britt was leaving, the line is all new. Ben Stilley's not there to address guys, but there's still going to be good leaders on this defense. Garrett Nelson being one. You have Quentin Newsom's going to be one already. You have a lot of guys that are going to have a lot of voices in that locker room, and so that's not a worry that he had. He did mention also having different quarterbacks to go up against in practice was going to be very valuable for the defense. It's no longer just going to be an Adrian. You have to prepare for a guy that can take off on you. You now have to prepare for a guy who can drop it in a bucket at 60 yards. So I think that that's going to be valuable as well. We did get burned on some big pass guys last year, so maybe having some different styles of quarterback will help our defense not be so good at one thing and then be bad at another thing. Will be more well-rounded. And so hopefully that's there. He did mention Bill Bush would kind of be a gopher on the defense when he's not doing special teams duties. He has typically done secondary in the past, but he said he'll go wherever we need him to go, and he's ready to do that as well. He did have like a longer stretch of talking about the transfer culture and how that's kind of affected how college football is now, and especially how that has affected who you're looking at in high school. You don't want to bring guys in that are going to be leaving after 2 years. After you dump 2 years worth of molding into them, they're going to just up and leave somewhere else, and then that skill set will show out somewhere else. He wants guys that are going to be here for the long haul, but he said there's no way to really prove that to yourself until the time comes and they don't leave. But to be able to form relationships with these guys to the point where they're not going to leave, or to even, when a guy comes in too, he said that kind of affects the guys that are here, that, this guy's coming in, he's taking my position. You want guys that are not afraid of competition, that are going to be willing to kind of take that head on and still face that. So Scott Frost, head coach here, sloppy first practice was something that he mentioned, that nothing really went smoothly. They're all getting familiar with it. They're not really a well-oiled machine at this point, and that's not what we expect that first week. But he said that everybody's getting used to it, the coaches and the players. They are running 2 huddles, so there's lots of reps to go around. They're running 2 different quarterbacks. Again, he didn't mention who that was. Everybody dodged this question. They asked Mickey Joseph. He says, I don't know. I'm watching the wide receivers. I'm not really looking at who's throwing the ball. But they asked Scott Frost the same thing, basically, and he said, I was working with the second team, the younger guys today. I wasn't even looking at first team. I don't completely buy that, but he was embracing the CEO role more this season already, just in spring practice. He spent the time on Monday with the defense, and so he's able to float around more, and so I think that that's really going to help the team, because Scott does have a lot of football knowledge, and I think that him being able to float around and not focus on one area of the team is going to be able to help him hit on all these other guys, and especially touch on like one-on-one basis with a bunch of the different players that maybe kind of got overlooked in the last few seasons. So he did touch on injuries as well. He said he didn't have a list in front of him, but he went through like Turner Corcoran, Teddy Prohaska, guys like that are going to be missing spring ball. You have Travis Wilklex also probably going to be missing spring ball. Gabe Irvin could be getting ready around that time, but he's more than likely going to miss out. Luke Reimer, he mentioned, had a surgery on his abdomen again. I believe that's his second one. But he said the upside to that, to all these guys kind of being out, is that those guys have already kind of established themselves as being able to play football. So now that they're not able to play in the spring, that's giving a lot of other guys opportunities to get reps and to get themselves up to that level as well. So touching on the running backs, he seems like Yant and Anthony are the front runner at running backs. Those are the two guys he mentioned. And Applewhite didn't so much say that, but I think that that's what Scott's looking at. Those are the two big bodies. Those are the two fast guys. And there's going to be other guys in the mix there, but I think that those are the two that they're kind of looking at right now. Touching on Mark Whipple now. So Mark Whipple wasn't so indirect when people asked him, who was the taking first snaps today at practice, and he said Thompson's QB1 right off the bat. He said despite every other coach avoiding the issue, he said it plain as day that Thompson's going to be quarterback one. That could change tomorrow, but for now he is, and that's all due to the experience that he has, and that puts him in front. So the more I hear Whipple talk as well, the more I like him. It's not like there's no political speak with him. It's all like straightforward and honest, and I really appreciate that. You have all these guys that, they talk well or whatever, but Mark Whipple kind of sits there like this, and he kind of just he's just like an old grandpa that's telling you, how it is. There's no like, BS that he's throwing your way. So I like hearing him more and more as he talks, and the things that he says also leads me to believe that he's still really sharp as far as football goes. He did mention that he does not try to so his terminology obviously differed from what we were using previously under Scott, but he said that he's trying to adopt his as much as he can to what we have been using. That way the players aren't having to change up what they know. He's like, it's easier for me to change what I know. I think that that's also really helpful because you don't want all these guys to learn basically the same play with different words. You would rather them just kind of meld in smoothly to what Mark Whipple is going to be teaching them. On that note, there was a bunch of guys that brought it up that nothing's really changing drastically. Obviously, the plays are going to be a little different, but as far as the names and the fundamentals and the details go, those are the same. So as long as those are the same, they're going to be able to figure out what they're supposed to be doing every play. The schemes are a little bit different, but there's no big drastic changes as far as like terminology and things go. And so I think that's going to help the team be able to take this on quickly and pick up the playbook and take it into the fall with a lot more confidence. He also reiterated that he wants the best guys on the field. There's not going to be any favorites. That the depth charts might be different in the spring than they are in the fall, obviously, because all these guys are going to be coming back off of injury. But again, he just wants the best. He wants the best receivers on the field, the offensive line on the field, the running backs. It doesn't matter what positions they're currently at, where they are on the depth chart, but he wants these guys to be able to come in and play ball, and those are the guys he's looking for. So I didn't get a chance to listen to all of the player interviews, but there was a few snippets I did get to listen to. So Garrett Nelson came on, and I thought it was funny. Ty Robinson called him G Nelly, and I don't know, I just liked that name. But his voice was already shot. Like first day, Monday, when they talked to him, his voice was already shot, and they kind of asked him about it. He's like, yeah, I got really excited to be back on the field. So he did say that he wants to be more focused and vocal instead of just like outwardly yelling at some guys. They kind of compared him to a pit bull when he first came in. He was just ready to take everybody's head off, and not so much in a negative way, just he wants to pump everybody up. But now he's being more focused, being here for a while, being able to see a bunch of different players and what they need to kind of step up their game. He's kind of being more focused with it. He's still going to be that vocal guy. He's still going to be full of energy, but he's going to be able to like specifically tell you what you're doing wrong. And if you need to get yelled at, he's going to yell at you. If you need kind of more of a direction to go with it, he's going to help you along with that as well. So he's really taking on this leadership role. I don't think it's like something that he's intentionally like working on. I think it's just he's kind of molding and maturing as a player, and so this is just the kind of guy he is. Guys look up to guys with a ton of energy and a ton of passion, and Garrett Nelson certainly has that. He's obviously juiced to be back on the field, as were a lot of the other guys. Travis Bolek was talking. Even though he's not playing spring ball, he's still around. He's still like learning the playbook and things like that. They mentioned a lot about his dad coming to be on the coaching staff and how that kind of impacts him. He said he's excited to have his dad around. His dad actually coached him in high school, so his senior year. So he said that he's excited to have him around. It's going to be nice to have him, to bounce ideas and stuff off of. But he did say that they've been watching a lot of Pitt offense in the film room, and he really, really likes how Mark Whipple utilized the tight ends. He would bring in 2 or 3 tight ends sometimes, and Vokalek says like that's going to be good for him. They did mention him and his connection with Austin Allen, and if he's been watching him in the combine, yeah, obviously he learned a lot from Austin Allen as they were roommates. And he said he could have chosen to go, leave after last season as well and go to the combine, but he said injuries kind of made that decision for him. He wasn't able to perform as much as he was or wanted to last season. And so the decision to come back was easy because of the injury, and he hopes to show out this season as well. So they did talk to Ty Robinson, and he talked more about the offensive line and or the defensive line more so than like the defense as a whole, and that's okay. That's what he's going to be doing. He did like that the offensive or outside linebackers now are going to be like pushed in with the defensive line more. These outside linebackers are going to learn more of this pass rush, more of this, almost they're going to be playing almost like linemen. So he really likes that the coach is the same, so they're going to be able to teach all these guys across the board the same techniques and things and what they're expected to do in the pass rush and things like that, what kind of gaps they're trying to fill. He did talk again about leadership and how leading by example is going to be something that he is going to do as much as he can. He said he learned it from Ben Stilley. He learned it from a lot of the veteran guys last season. And again, he's not trying to do it intentionally. He's just like, I'm going to put forth my best effort, and guys kind of react, well to that. And he has a voice in this locker room, being here for a few seasons now. But he did say that the technique is more vital to overcoming a sizable offensive line than like straight power. He's like, when you're going up against guys that are 350 pounds, you're not going to be able to overcome him just by power, especially if they're double teaming you. There's 2 of them now. He's like, technique's going to be more important than anything, physically that you could do. So it was nice to hear from him as well. Just I think a lot of people expected Ty Robinson to kind of emerge last season, and he did. He played very solidly last season, but it wasn't like what he wants, and it wasn't quite what the fans were expecting either. He's set up for a really big year this year. He's going to get a ton of snaps, and already having some experience under his belt from last season is really going to push him forward this year. Now, Ramir Johnson. So this one I kind of watched the most. I kind of watched this one twice, actually, and right off the bat, he said that it crushed him to miss the last 2 games of last season. Obviously, he came in when everybody else got injured, and he played his ass off. It was no lack of effort as far as Ramir Johnson goes, and he said he's taking that same approach to this season. He said, kill everything and work hard. I like the mentality, and as I mentioned in the Applewhite interview, this mentality is what's going to get him on the field. And I really think that even if he's not the guy on the field, even if he is, 4th on the depth chart or 3rd on the depth chart, that just his presence in that locker room and his mentality is going to be infectious, and it's going to infect these other guys. And there's no problem with that. There's nothing bad you can take away from a guy in the locker room that can pump everybody else up like that. He did mention that the team needed change last year, and people asked him to reiterate on that question. And he said that the coaches last year were good. He likes all the coaches that they had last year, but something wasn't working. Something needed to change. And he did say that there's something different about this year. There's something different in the locker room. There's a different energy in the locker room. There's more energy from his running backs coach and Brian Applewhite. He's like, just something's different. He couldn't put. I mean, he sat there and he's like, he couldn't quite put his finger on it. But he's like, just something's different about this year. And I can, like, just listening to it, I've been talking about it since last week, that the energy is a lot deeper than hype. Mentioning it, I think that it's more hope than hype, and people are really positive about this spring going into fall. He did mention, I'm a baller. I'm going to keep working hard, and I'm going to make my way up that depth chart because nobody's going to work harder than I am. He touched on Yant. He said that he's bigger, faster, and more focused. Again, he's not like tearing anybody else down as a way to like oh, I'm better than this guy at this, or I'm better at this guy than this. Every guy that he talked about, he was like building them up and saying like, oh, these guys are great, and oh, this guy's great. And he seemed to talk up everybody that way. And I think that that's a really positive thing to have in the locker room as well. As far as leadership goes, he says that I've been here the longest, and so it feels right for me to help these other guys that maybe haven't been here very long or struggled with some things last season. He said it only feels right for me to bring them up and coach them up from the inside the locker room. Touching on Nick Henrich, he was really pumped about the defensive line as well. He really hyped up Nash Hutmacher. He said that Nash is one of the strongest guys, if not the strongest guy on the team, and he does a great job of taking up bodies. They kind of asked him like what he's trying to improve upon, and he says that there's some things that they can improve upon, but he doesn't really see a drop off as far as the defense goes this year. So overall impressions, I say that a lot of the guys that spoke to the media seemed to have a very excited feel for the season, and they were really excited to be back and be able to be on the field. They begin to grow and improve as players, and so everybody's kind of moving forward. There's nobody that's kind of trying to remain stagnant or trying to meet the level they did last year. They're already past that. They're already thinking ahead and what they're going to do to be able to get on the field. The competition here is driving everybody, and I think that that's a great thing to see. Also, the playbook doesn't seem difficult to grasp. As I mentioned, Mark Whipple is kind of changing his terminology a little more than maybe the other way around, and I think that that's helping a lot of guys. I think that nobody was really intimidated by the playbook or the changes to the playbook, and I think everybody's kind of grasping it already and getting a grasp on it. They're just needing to learn the details now of what specific routes they're going to be running or where they're going to line up for this or whatever. But nobody seems intimidated by it. Nobody seems off-put by it, as some guys struggled with the playbook last year. So I don't think we're going to have that issue this season. Everybody's excited to show what they're capable of and eager to prove that on the field. And there's a lot of positive talk about every position group on the field. Every position, every guy that they talked to, every player they talked to was talking about other position groups and like they were hyped up about it. So again, I feel like that there's a different energy coming out of the locker room this season. But that's going to wrap up this week's Husker News recap. What did you guys think from the spring interviews? I know it was the first week, but are there any like big impressions that you guys got from the comments or the coaches or the players about how the team is shaping up already this spring? Let me know in the comments below, or you can find me on Twitter at Cobsmacked Media. But until next time, go Big Red.